Never before has this much performance been offered for this little money. The Bajaj Pulsar NS400Z, it's too good to be true. Or is it actually too good to be true? The Bajaj Pulsar NS400Z, 400Z. Honestly, I just prefer the Z. It rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. The Bajaj Pulsar NS400Z, it's a great deal. But it's not a great motorcycle, and I am not going to recommend that you buy one. And that is sad because all the signs say that had Bajaj taken their time, this might actually have been something truly great to bring home. I'd like to explain the time thing. In October 2021, Bajaj was celebrating 20 years of the Pulsar with the arrival of the new N250 and its cousin, which immediately everybody forgot about. What was it called? The F250. And then they said the N250 was going to be the largest Pulsar ever. And 31 months later, that happens. That's crazy. Motorcycles can be fast, but making them, creating solid two-wheeler products, that cannot be rushed. And anytime someone short circuits that process, take Ola's early product quality issues, for example, always goes sideways. And I think that's what's happened. The headliner for the Pulsar NS400Z is performance. It wears a heavily retuned Dominar engine, it makes 40 PS, it's fast. It's fast though, in an unexpectedly calm and restrained way, and you can look at it two ways. First, for new riders discovering serious performance for the first time, calm and restrained is very good. Or a broken promise to those who think the Pulsar is a performance brand and some amount of aggression, it's key to having fun. What you will get, in either case, is a reasonably competent motorcycle. Passing traffic is easy and you can let the revs drop and still make pretty swift progress. It's not the most flexible of engines, but I doubt that the riders of this will be complaining about flexibility at all, and that is also true for highway work. 60 kilometers an hour or 120, you'll be fine. What you should remember is there is noticeable high-frequency vibration in the pegs and the bars in the mid-revs, say around 5,000 RPM, and it's really smooth above 7,000 RPM, but in 6th gear, that's above 120. The Z also has riding modes, 4 of them. Don't ask me why, I don't get it. The top 2 modes, Road and Sport, they have the same net performance with a difference in throttle response. That difference is minor. And the Sport mode isn't even aggressive enough to justify the existence of a milder road mode, to be honest with you. How rushed was this motorcycle? When we make a list, the top item goes to the top of the list or the bottom of the list. On this, the top mode Sport, it's in the middle of the mode display on the cluster. Why doesn't this bike have a properly aggressive riding mode? Hold that thought, we'll come to that. Another strange thing about this Pulsar and why I keep feeling like this project was rushed is inconsistent fueling. This motorcycle surges now and then, it stumbles now and again, and this is very unusual for Bajaj because their fueling generally is pretty slick. This one, not production fueling, more like prototype. On the fuel economy front, it's a 400. We're going to see 21s riding aggressively, 24, 25s for most people, 26s for people who are super cautious at best. There is going to be some heat on your legs, you're going to feel it. And for that, I always say you have 2 solutions. 1, understand fast engines will make heat, and 2, work out how much heat you're willing to live with every day. Far and away, the best thing about the NS400Z is probably comfort. The riding position is familiar to anyone who's ever ridden an NS200. Slightly sporty and completely unchallenging. That's a good seat. The handlebars high enough. Your feet are tucked up and back, but only slightly, and you can ride the NS very comfortably for long durations without aches and pains. Part of that is also the suspension setup, which is a good setup. It feels comfortable but sporty, so there's constant feedback from the road, but you're not going to complain about it. And even on worse stuff, it is moving around a little bit, but you'll never think of it as out of control or not in character. Where the story of this Pulsar unravels is in the corners. It's why I can't recommend it. It doesn't start badly though. This is a sharpish motorcycle that corners well, and initially it feels like that. It goes where you point it, it gives you confident feelings, the tires feel grippy, all is well. And then one day, in a fast corner somewhere, it'll feel like you barely have any control over this motorcycle, and that's a little bit scary. To take an example, you'll find a corner you like and you'll go, 79 kilometers an hour. Great, controlled, good feeling, let's try it faster. 81, excellent. 82, excellent. And then at 83, suddenly, without warning, that feeling will go away. Suddenly, the bike will feel just about barely in control, vague in how it steers, and now it's not going where you want it to, it's roughly going where you want it to. It's very unsettling, it's not good for your confidence. Is that the reason why there is no aggro riding mode at all? You know, I can think of one other Bajaj product today that also does this. We'll come back to that. Back to this. This chassis needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of tuning, it needs a lot of refinement, and in the meantime, while Bajaj works it out, if you like cornering, avoid this. I suppose I'm happy that the brakes do work well enough. There's a gentle bite, there's no lack of brake force, but I would think of these as commuting brakes, not sporty brakes, because there's not a lot of feedback. Living with the NS400Z should also prove unchallenging. Bajaj Service has a good reputation as a cost-effective and helpful service network. And the NS400Z has that massive 5-year, 70,000 kilometer standard warranty. As long as you bought one new from Bajaj, there's no warranty at all if you bought one used. Remember that. Bajaj has also picked up the slack on quality quite a bit since the N250 came out, in fact. And if you park this 400Z next to a brand new NS200, you'll see the difference as night and day. This has better quality plastics, the panel gaps are neater, everything feels far superior in terms of how it's put together. I'm going to expect that this motorcycle, it will age naturally and not the accelerated aging that we learned to expect from the older Bajajes. The biggest missed opportunity, and again a time issue I think, is the design. The NS design is now a dozen years, maybe a little bit older, and with the NS400Z, Bajaj had a chance to completely overhaul and refresh what is an iconic motorcycle in their lineup. And we get this instead. From the bridge truss, number plate hanger at the back, to these S-shaped DRLs in the front, this is barely fresh. When this or an NS200 go by in traffic, I honestly don't know which one is which. And when you upgrade from your current NS200 to one of these, will this design signal your arrival? Somehow I doubt it. And I think that what happened in the design goes something like this. They took this motorcycle, which has a much larger radiator than before because it's 40 bhp. That radiator is not curved like on the 390 Adventure because that's expensive. So Bajaj said, okay, we need to shroud it. And they built a fairly convoluted shroud to shroud the radiator. Then the extra width of the radiator shroud, how do you resolve it with the shape of the tank, the NS tank shape, and its extensions? So they extended the extensions downwards, let it sort of melt onto the top of the shroud, shape the edges. Done. This can be called clever design only if this design team was put on an absolutely unreasonable schedule. But at some point, the NS200 is going to get an update. Hopefully, with a more studied, more thoughtful design that really brings the NS series to the modern day. And what's going to happen to this then? Is the flagship of the brand going to wear the older design while something smaller and more insignificant in the line has the fresh design? I wonder. In sum, the NS400Z is underwhelming. It's a great motorcycle on paper. 40 PS, traction control, riding modes, LCD screen. Wow! But qualitatively in order, reasonably smooth, bargain basement basic, utterly pointless. And that screen is cluttered. It's more Maruti than Kia. I'm not going to recommend it because how vague the sense of control gets at speed, I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't like how little the electronics do for you in the real world versus on the Pulsar's brochure. I'm shocked that a generation change a dozen or more years later warrants this. I can barely call it a facelift. And what I'm concluding from that is in October 2021, at the launch of the N250, this motorcycle was not in the Bajaj product plan at all. I don't think it was. And somehow, in less than half the usual time or thereabouts, production started. That's crazy. Haste has made what it usually does. And the original cliche I like to use is about salaries, slightly modified. I think it applies to new products. But if you're going to pay peanuts, you're going to end up buying monkeys. But I'm an optimist and I see the silver lining in this story as well. There was a motorcycle, is a motorcycle that is also vague and loose above a certain pace. A landmark and a headache for Bajaj. See, the 220F's frame was stretched to the limit of what might be considered reasonable back in the day. I remember a track day many years ago. We were all riding together, and the initial laps on the 220F were good. Fast, effortless, and fun. And then some critical threshold somewhere was passed. And then the feeling just went away. The bike just started bouncing around on its suspension. Going any faster just seemed impossible. I was leaning into turn 1 and Aspi passed me riding a 220F at that pace, bike bouncing up and down on the springs, and then he ground the center stand down so hard that I got a visor full of freshly dug tarmac. That 220F is proving impossible for Bajaj to move on from. It's what the N250 was created for. And as far as I can tell, it's convinced exactly zero 220F prospectives to move on. But I might have a solution, Bajaj. Let's restart the 220F resurrection project. We'll call it the 400F, and as you'll discover, a lot of the work is already done. The chassis is right here. Just take your time, don't rush it, and let's get it right.